Boxing.
Beats and rhymes.
No one
can do it better.
If you get a phone call as a modern day boxer from Saudi Arabia, from Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, Bob Arum, and you're in a mix, I don't expect to hear you complaining that your opponent moves too much around the ring. When you're getting 2 months to prepare, you have unlimited resources to prepare. I don't want to hear that he moves around the ring too much. The Canelo defender said he was too green when he faced Floyd. Floyd got him at the right time. It would be a different story if Canelo was a little older. Well, Canelo's 34 now. Has his skills in terms of cutting off the ring improved since the Mayweather fight? Or is it all William Scull's fault that the fight wasn't very appealing? Canelo, in the last few years, has had opportunities to avenge his losses to the likes of Bivol or take on David Benavidez, a fight that hasn't happened and has made Canelo very unpopular with a relatively large demographic of boxing fans, that he hasn't taken that fight. Him and Turkey put on this event, select William Scull as the opponent, and when the event flops, Canelo wants to talk about how he hates that style that William Scull used, but I'm sure him and Eddie Reynoso had the heads up of how William Scull has fought the whole of his pro career. He doesn't have a reputation for devastating knockouts and slugfests. Anyone who did a little research on William Scull would know this. When Crawford took that 140-pound title, the WBC title from Victor Postol, he floored him twice and watched him on the scorecards. A lot of people said that Bud's movement was a little over-excessive. But that's the only fight I can remember Bud getting that type of criticism. And for Canelo to say, not in so many words, but he was basically saying that Bud is going to be another William Scull. He said, I hate that type of style, talking about William Scull. And then he hinted that Crawford's going to do the same thing. That was disrespectful. At least let the fight play out first. And then you can call Bud whatever you want. Is he making that assessment that Bud is going to run all around the ring based on what you saw against Madrimov? Because I didn't see Bud running all around the ring. But a few people said it. And it seems to me that anytime a black fighter wins and uses movement, it's automatically called running. But Teofimo Lopez's movement and boxing was apparently the performance of the night at Times Square to many. They're going to say, well, he fought William Scull because it was for undisputed. So he had to go for it. He could have fought Andrade for undisputed at 160.
Canelo, and there was a window where he could have fought Andre.
There was, but he couldn't make 160 anymore. He moved up to 168.
So Eddie Hearn's going to go for, he couldn't make the weight no more. But do I personally believe that he couldn't squeeze another 160 fight for undisputed? Yeah, I believe he could. But he played risk-reward. How much were they going to pay Canelo to get outboxed by Andrade? For Andrade to lose either a controversial decision, or maybe Canelo could catch him up late and stop him. They played risk-reward because the style didn't favour Canelo. We can trace back the last 10 fights or so, and Crawford has way more knockouts at world title level. And yeah, I was falling asleep during the William Scull fight. But Canelo didn't need to take the fight. He didn't need to take it. He wanted to become undisputed twice. Well, he did so. But his skill set also got exposed in the process. He comes in, plodding in, moving his upper body side to side. And yeah, fighters with movement will toy with that style. Literally toy with it. Then, I saw one of his fans saying that fighters like William Scull are destroying boxing. Well, if Canelo had left Scull in Germany, we wouldn't have the witness protection out saying Canelo could do no wrong right now. Then dragging Devin Haney's name into it. Devin's just an easy target right now. Everyone's booing Devin wherever he goes. And he did stink the place out against Jose Ramirez. But equating what Devin did to the same thing what William Scull did when... How many times did Ramirez hit Devin clean, then saying, well, Devin deserved to lose the fight because he performed the same as Scull, which is a lie. They'd have to prove to me that Ramirez connected on Devin as much as Scull connected on Haney. You got stats? Receipts?
I don't think so.
William Scull is not beyond criticism, but the analysis of the fight needs way more balance than some are giving it. The gambling odds said you had to put on £100 to win £53 for Canelo by knockout. Scull by knockout, 28 to 1. That £100 would have netted you at least $2.5 grand. Let's face it, This fight was supposed to be tricky for a few rounds, and then Canelo was supposed to break him up with body shots, and this was supposed to be the stoppage win that Canelo hasn't been able to get since he stopped Billy Joe Saunders. But it didn't go that way, and they're upset that Scull didn't read the script. And hey, there were some people who say Scull won the fight. I don't go with that. But the exercise didn't go to plan. Let's just say that. The defenders will say, well, it was for undisputed, that's why he took the fight. Yeah, it's for undisputed for a belt that Canelo either vacated or stripped and didn't really care about. Canelo's already lineal champion. He didn't need to fight Scull to get lineage back or anything like that. Nobody was calling for this undisputed fight. They call for fights like Bivol Beterbiev undisputed, Spence Crawford for undisputed. Even Daniel Dubois versus Usyk has more appeal in terms of people wanting to see that fight for undisputed. And it's similar circumstances, the way Usyk and Canelo lost their IBF straps. But nobody cared about William Scull. They care about Daniel Dubois. 60,000 people purchased their tickets the day they went out. Wembley Stadium. The more you tried to blame Scull, the more you tried to defend Canelo, the worse it looks. Draw a line in the sand and move on. Canelo got the W. It's Crawford next. Canelo's not a perfect fighter by any means. And that's it.
Let us move on.
Boxing
beats and rhymes.
No one
can do it better.
Frank, news came out yesterday, Queens reposted that Jarrell Miller unfortunately had to pull out the fight with Fabio with a shoulder injury. Cynics will say, has he failed another test? Just comment on that.
It's not on VADA at the moment because VADA wouldn't let him on the programme.
So isn't that a problem in itself, regardless of the injury?
Well, of course it's a problem.
So what has happened with VADA and Jarrell Miller? Why won't VADA accept Jarrell Miller on the programme? What's going on? Why is Anthony Joshua saying, do you know why Miller versus Wardley was cancelled? Why is he telling us he knows why, but he's keeping it a secret?
Keep the ep a secret, why not?
What's happened? Has he popped again? But this time they're trying to shut down the media frenzy because it's going to be embarrassing that he's popped once on Matchroom, twice Top Rank, and now he's popping on Frank Warren's card. So this is suspicious. And they're hiding information. Someone's hiding information. If he did get popped, who popped him? Because I believe there's VADA testing as well as UCAD. Not really like AJ to put something like that out there.
What about Baby Miller? Can we just add him in there?
5, yeah. Do you know why Fabio and Miller didn't happen?
Well, we was told that Miller's got an injury.
Is it? Yeah. Okay. God damn. I could do your job better than you. Get me in front of the camera, I'll give people the lowdown.
Mate, you won't even tell us who wins out, who's second. Dubois.
Coogan didn't twig what AJ was saying. He said, I could give you the lowdown better than you. If Coogan twigged what AJ was saying, he could have probed him. But yeah, he's got hold of the information. He's in the same training facility as Fabio Wardley. And he knows why the fight isn't going ahead. And it's not no shoulder injury. I reckon it's another multiple PED violation. And I told you guys, when this fight was announced, that Frank is just hoping with his fingers crossed that this all goes smooth and something like this don't happen. I don't think they want news of a multiple PED violation to come out when they had the heads up that he's popped on 2 major promotions already. That's what I think. What is it AJ's hiding? I believe he's popped again. That's what I believe. And I could be wrong, but I believe he's popped again. Multiple PED violation. And look, boxing is hot right now. In the UK, it's hot. The media have an incentive in terms of accreditation and access for content from these events that Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn are putting on. DAZN and the Saudis want to distance themselves from that part of the game because it's not going to bring the sponsors in that are required to prop up the ambitious scheduling and programming they're doing. Hey, I'm going to sound like the boring old man, but this is the boring old man channel. And the PED usage goes hand in hand with the thug behavior as well. A lot of people think, oh, it really sells the fight. It drives sponsorship away from the game. They don't mind a little hyping up the weigh-in or the press conference. But guys like Jarrell Miller, he's got multiple PED violations. He's cursing at senators, pushing people around. It's a little too much. And the wall of silence might be in effect right now. I know for sure that the mainstream media ignored Tevin Farmer when he spoke about no testing when he fought Cepeda pre-fight, post-fight. The mainstream media ignored the story. And he was making a big deal about it, and then he stopped. Then all of a sudden he got a rematch, and I would imagine a financial incentive not to keep bleating on about the testing. And as for Miller, you will never see him fight on any reputable promotion in the UK again. Riyadh season, you won't see this guy again. He's done. But how does Anthony Joshua give the game away? And this hasn't become a bigger story. Just basically hidden in the IFL TV video. And Seconds Out mentioned it on their website. Why is it being hidden like that?
Boxing. Beats and rhymes.
No one
can do it better.
But anyway, Fabio, 30 years of age, 18-0-1, 17 aside the distance, will now take on Matchroom's Justice HUNI, 12-0, 7 inside the distance. The New Zealander is 26 years of age. Now, the debate should be, is he a better replacement than Jarrell Miller? Well, let's put it like this. Jarrell Miller, in my opinion, would not beat Fabio Wardley unless he ingested a whole lot of pets. He wouldn't beat Fabio Wardley. Now, I know a lot of people disagree with that, but that's my opinion. Justice HUNI, 26 years of age, the New Zealander, is a skilled operator, dedicated to his craft, and is technically very good. And he's hungry. People keep talking about how Kevin Lerena had him hurt. Now, he outboxed Kevin Lerena thoroughly until the last round, where he got tagged. And he's come back with a few stoppage wins. Early stoppages. I think this is a better opponent than Jarrell Miller. And Fabio can't sleep on this guy. I think Justice HUNI is just as good as Fraser Clark, who drew with Fabio. And in some facets of his game, he's more fluid than Fraser. He's got faster hands and faster feet. Fraser, though, has size, has a good jab and can box a little, and has a lot of experience on Team GB. June the 7th, Portman Road. Big fight for Fabio. Stadium fight for Fabio. Some people have complained about the replacement. Well, there's roughly a month to go. You need to get a fighter who's prepping for a fight already. HUNI's hungry and he's ready to go. Do people think the standards in the 70s and 80s were much different from today? Who was you expecting to replace Jarrell Miller within a month?
Boxing.
Beats and rhymes.
No one
can do it better.
Leigh Wood, 36 years of age. I didn't realize he was that old. Same age as his opponent, Anthony CACACE. Leigh's record, 28 wins, 3 losses, 17 aside the distance. He's the bigger puncher out of the two. Anthony CACACE with a record of 23 wins, 1 loss, no draws, 8 inside the distance. He had a very good 2024, stopping Joe Cordina to win the IBF 130-pound title and then defending against Josh Warrington. Coincidentally, Leigh Wood's last fight and last win was against Josh Warrington in 2023. He hasn't fought since October 2023. He had a good year. He also avenged the loss to Mauricio Lara and won back his IBF 126-pound title, which he since relinquished. I'm assuming because he was struggling to make the weight. CACACE, however, gave up his belt because he didn't want that Eduardo Nunes smoke, his mandatory. And when fighters give up their world titles like that, when they're not tight at the weight, it just reminds me of Peter Quillen, it reminds me of James DeGale, and it's a risky strategy, in my opinion, to give up your world title unless you're tight at the weight. But he's playing risk-reward on his Queensbury promotion, and Frank must be paying him pretty well for him to give up his belt to fight Leigh Wood in Leigh Wood's hometown. It's going to be in the Nottingham Arena. Either Frank's paying him very well, or he really didn't want that Eduardo Nunes smoke. And I don't blame him. And while it might not be something a boxer would want to sing about to duck his mandatory like that and give up his belt, if you watch Nunes fight, you can understand why. Leigh Wood stopped Warrington in the 7th of an excellent fight at the Sheffield Arena, October 2023. Josh Warrington was winning the fight until Leigh started to put his combinations together and conclusively stopped Josh. CACACE against Warrington. Warrington was in that fight for long periods, actually doing very well. CACACE pulled the win out on points, but I weren't that impressed. He looked good against Joe Cordina. He upset Cordina. I didn't believe he could beat Cordina, but he outpunched Cordina and stopped him. And I believe he has to be very controlled against Warrington. The reckless approach he displayed against Cordina will likely get him knocked out against Leigh Wood, unless he takes Leigh Wood out early. and he's not a banger like that, despite what the Joe Cordina result says. Leigh Wood is an underrated counter-puncher, but will his power carry up to 130? CACACE is quite a big 130-pounder. I'm going to pick Anthony CACACE against my best judgment. I do think Leigh Wood is the better boxer. Very good counter-puncher, underrated counter-puncher. If CACACE fights the same type of fight he fought against Joe Cordina, even though he won that, I think Leigh will knock him out. The reason I'm picking against Leigh Wood is the inactivity. I don't like it. I think CACACE will attempt to use his height and reach, but he's going to get drawn into a slugfest. I'm not sure if Leigh, though, will have the sharpness to not get his work smothered. And I'm not sure if he deals with CACACE's volume.
Boxing
Beats and rhymes.
No one
can do it better.
Terence Crawford is now 37 years of age. Canelo is now 34. They're saying this is the biggest fight in boxing. Dubois versus Usyk. Usyk, similar age to Terence, 36, 37. Fury versus AJ. They're mid to late 30s as well if that fight happens. How old is Arthur Beterbiev? How comes so much of these super fights are paired up between fighters deep into their 30s, some near 40, or at least one of the participants is deep into their 30s, near 40? Why are the young guys not dominating the game? Why are they not constantly banging the door for unifications and undisputed, these young fighters? Are some of the people in the industry correct that this generation of fighters have just been paid way too much money and it's stole their hunger? I like Devin Haney, but when I see Devin and his opponent throw so little punches in that fight, I can excuse Devin for what he's coming back from. But I was very disappointed. I was very, very, very disappointed. And then to hear Bill, his dad, on Coach Malachi's channel, trying to explain to the callers what the strategy was, I was like, Bill, come on, man. Crawford had one fight since the Spence fight in 2023. Why is he not having another fight before he takes on Canelo? Because if it goes wrong, that question is going to come up many a time in conversation. What was he playing at, being so inactive? At least Canelo has the William Scull fight behind him now, and in private with Eddie Reynoso. Unless they're total idiots, they're not going to be talking about how boring William Scull is. They're going to be talking about what Canelo wasn't good at in that fight. But if you stay on the sideline and don't fight, you could easily enter the ring with a massive false sense of security. So Canelo's had his wake-up call, and maybe Crawford needed another fight to perhaps sharpen up or get his wake-up call. I have a feeling the winner of that fight will be the one who's able to preserve themselves better by the time they enter the ring. We're talking about any psychological effects from years of fighting, bad habits that haven't needed to be corrected because they've been winning mostly. Physical decline. I know Bam Rodriguez has a unification at Superfly against a South African, Fumalela CAFU. 11-0, free draws, 80-sided distance, 5'6", WBO super flyweight champion. I'll have to do a little study and see how good he is. I heard someone say Bam is not getting the attention he deserves. You're probably right. I don't think he's too bothered though. I don't think he really cares about all that. He's promoted by Eddie Hearn, trained by Robert Garcia. They've worked out a good deal with DAZN and Matchroom, and Bam's making good money, and it looks like he likes what he's doing. And he's got bodies. Unbeaten Sonny Edwards, Rung Vasai, Coadras, Juan Estrada. He's got bodies. One of the better resumes in the game. Good matchup between two young fighters is SHEERAZ versus Berlanga. He split with Ricky Funes. He's now with Andy Lee. Funes said he didn't split face-to-face or talk to him personally. It looks like he done it via email. There was another individual named Taz who was working with SHEERAZ, who got SHEERAZ together with Funes. He's been dismissed from the camp as well. Funes said there was a contract which he didn't bother to look at because he thought they were that tight. And it basically said once SHEERAZ made $3 million in purses, they'd restructure the contract and they'd get a flat rate. But he didn't look at the contract or the paperwork. And he says he didn't get paid the money he was supposed to get paid. He said the only mistake he made was telling Hamza he was ahead after 8 against Adames. He knew that was wrong. He also said that the rumour that Hamza's hand was broken was not true. His hand was bruised. Now, it could have been bruised so bad that he couldn't push through the pain threshold and punch with it. Some people in the industry may say it's a requirement to be able to push through the pain barrier. Perhaps not a broken hand, but a bruised hand? You've got to keep punching. And he'll need to punch consistently against Edgar Berlanga, because he's not going to get Berlanga out of there with one shot. At least I don't believe he will. I want SHEERAZ to win, but I think Berlanga's going to knock him out. I really do. I like the matchup though. I really like the matchup. Berlanga is going to be very stubborn in front of that New York crowd, not to lose to some Brit. Trust me, he's going to be very stubborn, very belligerent. And I don't think Hamza's first fight with Andy Lee should be against Berlanga. I'm not saying Berlanga is some world beater, but he's a big guy, power puncher, and this is his first fight at 168? Not sure about that.
Boxing
Beats and rhymes.
No one
can do it better.